It has the potential to be the biggest protest, maybe ever, in Irish history. It really does. So it's a midweek protest at 1 o'clock, and we're arguing for it, and it may well be turned into an element of an unofficial half-day or full-day strike for some people, where you have unionised workforces, they walk out and don't come back. In other cases, people take the day off, come up from around the country, etc. It's the potential to be absolutely massive. And if it is, then the government is in massive trouble, because they did all these concessions, they attacked the protesters, they did all of these things, but it hasn't had any impact. The mobilisations continue. And if it was very, very big, then you have the potential for the government to be in massive crisis afterwards, and potentially to fall before even getting around to imposing the bills on people. Just the very last thing I say is what gives away the game of the establishment a little bit is they talk about the mob, right? And it gets to the heart of what their problem is about what's happening. So I meant to bring, there's a Daily Mail front page last Tuesday I think, which was a picture of me and a picture of Ruth Coppinger saying Democrats, in quotation marks, who believe in mob rule. And that was the front page, you know. So a complete demonisation. But what it's about, the notion of the mob, it's the idea that the temerity of people, of working class people, to get involved in politics outside of the framework of an election. That's when you're meant to be voting fodder for the Labour Party. Just go, vote for people who lie, give election promises, let them off, betray all their promises, and then go and vote for them again, and don't pay too much attention in between. So that's what they're scared about, is that the mob has taken over politics. And there's a brilliant quote from James Connolly about the mob, which I just finished with, where he says, "There was a time, stretching for more than 1,000 years, when the mob was without power or influence, when the entire power of the governments of the world was concentrated in the hands of the kings, the nobles, and the hierarchy. That was the blackest period in human history. It was the period during which human life was not regarded as being as of much value as the lives of hares and deer. It was the period when freedom of speech was unknown, when trial by jury was suppressed, when men and women were tortured to make them confess crimes before they were found guilty, when persons obnoxious to the ruling powers were arrested and kept in prison without trial. But at last, with the development of manufacturing, came the gathering together of the mob, and consequent knowledge of its numbers and power, and with the gathering together also came the possibility of acquiring education. Then the mob started upon its upward march to power, a power only to be realised in the Socialist Republic. In the course of that upward march, the mob has transformed and humanised the world. It has abolished religious persecution and imposed toleration upon the bigots of all creeds. It has established the value of human life, softened the horrors of war as a preliminary to abolishing it, compelled trial by jury, abolished the death penalty, and in some countries abolished the death penalty for all offences. And today it is fighting to keep the children from the factory and mine and put them to school. The mob, the most blind and ruthless tyrant of all, with one sweep of its grimy, toil-worn hand, swept the stocks, the thumbscrew, the wheel, the boots of burning oil, the torturer's vice, and the state into the oblivion of history. And they who today would seek to view those arguments of kings, nobles, and ecclesiastics must seek them in the lumber room of the museum. All hail then to the mob, the incarnation of progress.